Hi, Martin Turner here, and welcome to ACCT11059, Accounting, Learning and Online Communication. This week we'll be focusing on the learning in accounting, learning and online communication. And we'll be having a look at the reason for the seasons. Why is it hot in summer and cold in winter? And we'll be looking at what is learning. What do we think learning is? Then we'll look at the Moodle site and the assessment in the unit, and then we'll have a minute paper. So why is it hot in summer and cold in winter? Just turn off the video and just write down your answer to that. Why do you think it is hot in summer and cold in winter? Now, many people will say it's hot in summer and cold in winter because the sun's closer to the earth in summer than it is in winter. And that is a common misconception that many people have for the reason for the seasons. But of course, it probably doesn't matter. We can have all sorts of misconceptions about how things work in our heads, but that doesn't matter if we're not involved in science or needing to understand the solar system. But of course, people who study science, say at Harvard, one of the leading universities in the world, they'll know what the reason for the seasons is, because they study it in first year astronomy. And some researchers did that. They approached some graduates of Harvard on their graduation day and asked them for the reason for the seasons. And this is what they had to say.
Candidate in arts.
Despite a lifetime of the very best education, students in our classrooms are failing to learn science. Many of these students will graduate from college with the same scientific misconceptions that they had on entering grade school. To test how a lifetime of education affects our understanding of science, we asked these recent graduates some simple questions in astronomy. Consider, for example, that the causes of the seasons is a topic taught in every standard curriculum.
Okay, I think the seasons happens because as the Earth travels around the sun, it gets nearer to the sun, which produces warmer weather, and gets farther away, which produces colder weather, and hence the seasons. How
hot it is or how cold it is at any given time of the year has to do with the closeness of the Earth to the sun during the seasonal periods.
The Earth goes around the sun, and it gets hotter when we get closer to the sun, and it gets colder when we get farther away from the sun.
These graduates, like many of us, think of the Earth's orbit as a highly exaggerated ellipse. Even though the Earth's orbit is very nearly circular, with distance producing virtually no effect on the seasons, we carry with us the strong, incorrect belief that changing distance is responsible for the seasons.
I took physics, planetary motion, and relativity, and electromagnetism and waves.
I've never really had a scientific background whatsoever, and I got through school without having it. I've gotten very far without having it.
I had quite a bit of science in high school, yeah, through physics, first year, and 2 years of chemistry.
Regardless of their science education, 21 of the 23 randomly selected students, faculty, and alumni of Harvard University revealed misconceptions when asked to explain either the seasons.
So you can see that graduates from Harvard Science who've actually studied this very question about the reason for the seasons still retain that incorrect conception they had before they studied science. The reason for the seasons. They had studied in first year astronomy what was the reason for the seasons, which is that the angle of the sun changes as you're going around the Earth, and it's more direct when it's summer and more at an angle in winter. And it's because the Earth is at an angle to the sun, about 21 degrees, and that's what causes the seasons. But the misconception that many of us have is that the reason for the seasons is that the Earth gets closer to the sun in summer and further away in winter. And this is not true. So what's gone wrong here? How come these Harvard graduates who studied it at university still haven't got it? Don't understand something as simple as that. What's gone wrong? Well, this is an example of poor learning, and in fact, very poor learning. They've managed to go through their degree and not really understand what they were looking at. Often it's just rote learning, and then you forget it. Now, I asked a group of students this question. If a company owns 60% of the equity in another company, it will typically include 60% of the assets, liabilities and profits of that company in its group accounts. True or false? Just turn off the video and write your answer to that. Pretty well every listed company and most mid-sized companies are groups of companies. And so when we're looking at our firm's financial statements, they'll be group accounts or consolidated accounts. So if a company owns 60% of the equity in another company, it would typically include 60% of the assets, liabilities, and profits of that company in its group accounts. True or false? Well, when I've asked students that, who have just finished a subject where they had learnt that and are just going into a subject right at the end of their degree, these are the sort of results I got. 40% said true, 39% said false, and 21% don't know. The correct answer is false. In the group accounts, if you have a 60% subsidiary, you put 100% of the assets, liabilities, and profits into the group accounts, not 60%. So it's only a true or false, so it's 50-50. 39% got it right. So that was worse than just guessing. But they just studied it. One student said, "We learnt this in a previous unit. I can no longer remember it." This reflects my typical learning experience at uni. This is at the end of their degree. So what has gone wrong? Why can't people remember something just a few months or weeks after they'd studied it? Well, one student emailed me 9 years on after studying a capstone unit financial statement analysis unit with me and said, "Almost 9 years on, I keep my unit notes in my office. Just used them again today." There were about half a dozen units that were really worth going to uni for, and that was certainly one. So what learning have you been doing at uni? And here's a student 9 years on thinking about that. What makes it really worth going to uni for? What makes it really worth going to uni for you? So what is learning? What is the learning that we're seeking to do at uni? University education is not additive, but transformative. It's not a quantitative increase in facts I add to my backpack of knowledge. Rather, learning is something that changes me in some significant way. And you can check out the video, What is Learning, on our Moodle site. As you think about, what do you think learning is? Is it just a quantitative increase in knowledge? Is it just adding facts? Or is it something more? Now, learning is more effective when it is an active rather than a passive process, where we actively learn, we're actively constructing our own knowledge, we're actively trying to understand it for ourselves. We're not just passively receiving the facts from other people. In the previous unit, and I'm ashamed to admit how much material, almost all of it, I've forgotten. We are passive learners, often learning things superficially to regurgitate an exam and to forget it all the next day, without ever fully understanding it. Passive, regurgitate, forget is not learning. It's pretend learning because people find they can't even remember it. And we can get to the end of our degree like those Harvard graduates and not really have understood a lot of what we were supposedly learning at the time. So don't be like these students at the end of the degree. Think about these issues now at the beginning. I found the learning techniques in this unit to be unlike any other I had encountered at university before. It took me a while to adjust, but I found it a fantastic experience. It was great to actually be an active learner for once. I never considered the possibilities of learning in a not passive atmosphere. The most significant realization I had concerning the unit is that we were encouraged to discuss things with the lecturer, the tutors, and our classmates. Not just be told what is right. A mutually beneficial environment where every opinion was valued. I feel now that I can be more critical in my judgments and opinions than I was at the start of the unit. So you'll have the opportunity to learn actively in this unit, and most people will find they need to adjust to that if you've been mainly used to just passive learning. I wish I'd known about how to learn at the start of the unit rather than using the first 4 weeks to learn it. Knowing how to learn, this is the key skill. Because there's so much change going on all the time, we will need to be constantly learning and we need to get good at it. So you'll get the opportunity to develop some of your skills in this unit in how you learn and understanding different ways we can approach our learning. And I advise you to get right into it now and make those adjustments quickly. So we've had a look at a little bit of an idea of what learning is. Now let's look at the Moodle site. You should go to it on your computer. You'll find that there's a weekly schedule in the top center section. Numbers of people print that off, or you can save it as a soft copy, and that sets out each week the topics that we'll be looking at, also the readings each week, and those readings are from the study guide, and also sets out some of the learning tasks that you can do each week. And you'll see and you can also plan when the assignments are due, and plan how you're going to spend time in our unit. There's also information about the assessments in the assessment folder in the top center section. You should have a good look through those. And you'll see the assessment in this unit is 5% peer-wise, and then 25% assignment 1 and 70% assignment 2. And each of those 2 assignments are broken up into a number of stages. So the idea is you can work steadily each week, reading and doing the assessed learning tasks and making some submissions steadily through the term. Now at the end of the term there's no exam. So that's great when you get to the end of the unit, and if you've got any exams in other units you can focus on them more easily after we've finished the term. But what the trade-off for that is that during term you need to work steadily on the unit, and so you should plan where you're going to do the time to do it. This is not a good unit to back end the work, and if you let a few weeks go by and don't do very much, it becomes a bit of a nightmare as you're trying to catch up while things are continuing to move forward. So get good hold of the assessments, and you'll see step 1 and step 2 of assignment 1 are things you need to be working on right up front. You'll also see the videos section. You can click on the videos in there and you can see the various videos we've got. There's also a numbers of videos, or the videos also in each week in the center part of Moodle. And the study guide. You can find the study guide in the study guide section, and you click on study guide and you'll see those chapters there. Some people print them off, some people read them on the screen, and they're the key readings, so you need to be getting onto those each week. You'll also see some exemplars in the feedback section. We have some exemplars from previous students, for their total work, and we also have some each week And so you can have a look at those exemplars before you do the piece of work, and you can also have a look at them afterwards to see, to give you some feedback. And you could also, there's also some blogs up on there too that you can have a look at. So get familiar with the Moodle site, spend a little bit of time looking through it if you haven't already, and that's obviously your go-to place for various content and materials, and also for how to connect in with other students. Now in assignment 1, there's the various due dates are set out there. You should plan them. Some people put a piece of paper up on the wall, or they have however system they have. They see when everything's due, and they think to themselves how they're going to fit that in with their other commitments. And there's estimated maximum times required for each step, and so that can give you a bit of guidance as to how much time to allow. And some people spend more, some people spend less, but that's the sort of guidance that we give. Sometimes you find something particularly interesting, you might spend more time on it. Other times, you know, the work can be done quite much more quickly. And also you'll see the study guide and the reading of the study guide to do different steps of the assignment, and then you'll be writing your KCQs. And so have a look through the assignment, take your time to read it, and look at the little introductory paragraph under each step, and get a feeling for what's going to be required. And on our Facebook page, the unit Facebook page, you can discuss what's required with each other and staff, and are those requirements clear or confusing to you? So get a good grip on what's required in the unit in terms of the assessed learning tasks. Well, let's take a minute now to write down what was the most important thing you learned today and what questions still remain unanswered. This is a very valuable exercise to do, whether watching a video, attending a class, whatever. So just turn off the video and just write down your answer to those 2 questions. Just spend 1 minute doing that. Welcome back. So what we've looked at today is we looked at the reason for the seasons. Why is it hot in summer and cold in winter? And we saw those Harvard graduates who've had some of the best opportunities for learning in people in the world, who've done a science degree at Harvard and didn't know the answer. They still had these misconceptions that a lot of people have who haven't studied science at Harvard have, even though they'd looked at that in their first year astronomy class. And it's just a fundamental piece of information to understand how the solar system's working, just to have any sort of sense of the area of astronomy and just the solar system. And we asked a question, why is that? Why are students failing to learn these things? And we had a look at what learning is, and we see that what often people can fall into is this passive learning. I'll just sort of regurgitate what I'm told. And it's a form of rote learning. I'll just go through that. Now that's part of learning. Rote learning is part of learning, but it's not enough. You'll tend to just forget it. You also need to make the mental effort to understand the material for yourself. And we'll be supporting you in this unit to do that. And to build up your skills to understand it. And to develop your own personal meaning as you connecting to the material. And you'll have a lot of opportunities to do that. We also had a little bit of an overview of the Moodle site and the assessment, and you need to have a good look at that. And don't forget to have a look at some of the short videos we've got, for example, one on what is learning. Now in the workshops in week 1, you'll have the opportunity to join the unit Facebook page, so you should definitely do that. You can do it before the workshop, of course. Join Peerwise. Get started on Peerwise early. And you'll see the Peerwise folder in the top of Moodle, which you can, that'll give you the information on how to join. We'll also be completing the pre-unit survey and looking at assignment 1, step 1, looking at the due dates and what is required. And there's a little video on KCQs, key concepts and questions, which is a method we'll be using to support you to read critically and for personal meaning. Assignment 1, Step 2 will also look at the workshops, and you'll set up your personal profile on Moodle and your blog. And you also have the opportunity to visit other people's blogs. All right, well, thank you very much. It's great to have you in our unit, and I look forward to working with you this term. Bye for now.